So today we are going to be talking about rhetorical appeals. This should be an overview for most of you who've already read the reading from Everything's an Argument on Ethos, Pathos, and Logos, but I'm going to be highlighting a few points. So why are we talking about ethos, pathos, and logos right now? Well, it is a prerequisite for doing the rhetorical analysis paper, right? We've talked about what a rhetorical analysis is, and we've talked about rhetorical strategies, right? We've said that for rhetorical analysis, we identify moments in an argument or in a piece of writing. We identify strategies in a piece of writing, and we discuss their effect on an audience, right? This is what these are the strategies in in this piece of writing, but here's what it does. This is how it was successful. This is how it got us thinking, or this is how it got the audience's feeling, or this is how it got an audience trusting, right? So it'll be, this lecture should be especially useful for you as you begin working on your rhetorical analysis papers. So where do these come from? Well, actually, Aristotle came up with the three rhetorical appeals that we are going to be talking about today. And he identified them as ethos, pathos, and logos. We'll go ahead and start with ethos. And ethos has to do with the credibility or trustworthiness of a writer, right? How they just develop their character or their credibility. Okay, so I'll ask you, why do you trust me, right? What is it about me that you think, oh yeah, she's trustworthy, right? This is a question that you can ask when you're engaging in any piece of writing or any speech. Like, why should I trust this person, right, or this author? There's a few ways that as writers you can establish your credible ethos, right? But as analysts, you want to be paying attention to see if a writer is doing these things. So how do we establish credibility? Well, your credentials. Right? Andrea Lunsford, the author of your textbook, is a PhD, right? We tend to trust people with PhDs, right? So just having your credentials can help establish a credible ethos, right? Other ways we can establish a credible ethos, well, being honest, right? If a person is giving a speech or you're reading something and you find out it's a whole lie, right, well, that really diminishes a writer's credibility, right? So by just being honest, you can begin creating a credible ethos. How else? Presentation. The way a writer presents him or herself. Right, and I like to use this example. I was teaching, this is years ago at this point, but a paper was due, and I was going around the classroom collecting papers, and a student was like looking in his bag, and out came this like crumpled up piece of paper, and he handed it to me. This is his essay. I asked him, how does this affect your credibility? Right? You can imagine if you saw that student, you might think, ooh, he's not very trustworthy. I bet that's not a good paper, right? You begin to make a judgment about the quality of the writing before you even engage it. So the way you present your work, right, and the way you present yourself often enhances credibility. And when we're analyzing a text, you're welcome to have an entire paragraph or maybe two just talking about how a writer establishes his or her credible ethos, right? Okay, to go back to the strategies lecture, so the strategy would be the credential, right? And the effect of that, how it would affect audiences is, hey, it would help the author establish his credibility and thus make us trust him or her a little bit more. So a few other things that you can do in order to enhance your credibility. Well, being unbiased have biases, right? We all lean towards one side of the argument or the other. We can't be perfectly unbiased. But being honest about your biases or striving to be unbiased, meaning without a slant to one way or the other, can also enhance credibility. Anything else? And finally, being an authority on the topic. This is similar to credentials, but a little bit different. So let's imagine that you're doing a research paper on Oakland, right, and how Oakland has changed over the last 20 years. Well, you might go and ask someone in the community, right, about their experience, and they would be, who's a resident of Oakland, who's lived there for a long time. You could go ask this person about his or her experiences, right, and they would be an authority on that subject, right? Okay, so that is ethos, appeals to ethos. Things that make an audience trust the author, right? Or things that help a writer establish his or her credibility. Let's move forward. Pathos, right? And notice how in ethos we see that word, that the prefix, same one that we see for ethical. Well, pathos, right? That prefix, you can think of all the words that have path in it, right? Like sympathy, empathy, apathy, right? All words related to emotion. And that is just what appeals to pathos are. Things that appeal to an audience's emotions. Okay, so strategies that tend to appeal to an audience's emotions. And you can think about this right now. Like, what makes me feel? When am I reading something and begin to feel something? Maybe feel angry, maybe feel sad, maybe feel upset, maybe feel happy, right? Well, here are a few things. Music, right? Now, this isn't in writing, but often if we're listening to advertisements or if we're watching something, music can have an emotional effect on us, right? Boom, 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 boom. Oh, it's going to be spooky, right? So music is one strategy that, especially in visual arguments, that we see. Okay, other things, visuals, right? Last week you took a quiz, and one of the things that I made mention of was the Sarah McLachlan PSA with the sad puppy, right? That would be a visual that makes us feel, the effect of that would make us feel upset, right, or sad, right? So visuals can also really make us feel something. Other things, personal stories, anecdotes, if you see these in writing, for instance, a little personal narrative or personal story, often that's a way to build a bridge with readers, right? To make them empathize or sympathize with the viewpoint, to make them step into the shoes of the writer, right? So these are a few ways that writers can appeal to our emotions or appeal to pathos. Okay, final one is logos. And again, you can see that prefix. These are logical appeals. Now, to return to Aristotle, he split this up into two categories. He said there was inartistic logical appeals or inartistic proofs, as well as artistic logical appeals or artistic proofs. So I'm going to split them up as well. And I'll start with inartistic because we're most familiar with that. So inartistic logical appeals are things that get us thinking that we don't actually create, right? This is evidence that we borrow from other researchers or other sources. So research, surveys, facts, statistics, expert opinion, these are all pieces of information that we gather, right, that appeal to an audience's sense of logic, right? If I say 1/4 of food goes wasted, right? If I bring in that statistic, it encourages readers or encourages viewers, right, or listeners to think, right? Maybe to think about their own food practices and their own food waste, right? That's the effect of inartistic logical appeals. Important thing with inartistic is it comes from another source. But artistic logical appeals, these are things that make an audience think as well, but it's ones that you as a writer or the writer him or herself creates. So this is something like a metaphor or analogy or some sort of comparison, right? Let's say you're reading and the writer compares the situation to another situation previously, right? Other artistic precedents, which is an event that comes before that's used as an example, right? So right now, you guys probably know, in Colorado, in Washington, pot has been legalized, right? And so many folks in California are using, right, the precedent of those states in order to make an argument for why pot should be legalized in California, right? They're using that example to get us to think critically that, okay, well, if they're doing it there, maybe we should do it in California as well. So those are a few examples of artistic logical appeals. Now, these are just a few strategies that are associated with Ethos, Pathos, Logos. Your book goes a little bit more in depth with this conversation. A big point to take away from this, for your rhetorical analysis paper where you're really analyzing a text, right? And you've come up probably at this point with strategies and moments that you think, oh, this is really persuasive. Now you can begin thinking, using ethos, pathos, and logos, you can begin to specify how it was persuasive. Oh, this moment really got us feeling something. Maybe got us angry. We would explain how it got us angry. Or it made us really trust the author, or perhaps it really got us thinking.